Alright, I don't know what's going on today, but I have been trying this for hours and I give up. So this is the last video that I'm going to do. I shot a video and I'm just going to walk you through super fast because I'm frustrated at wasting so many hours on this. But I shot a video on special cases and I saved it and it's not anywhere to be found, just like the other, I don't know, 5 times I've been shooting videos today and they just go away. I don't understand, so forgive me. But special cases, again, it's basically when you have a plus b, it's in parentheses, that's a binomial squared. This is the same as taking two binomials that look like this with a plus in the middle. There's a formula associated with that special case. And so all you do is, if a is the first term, which in this case is 8c, b is the second term, which is 3D, then I just plugged in the a squared, 2 times a times b plus b squared. So I just used this formula, plugged in the terms, did my math, and that's where I got 64c squared. This is 48cd, and this is 9d squared. And then here's another one. A equals 3x, because that's the first term in the parentheses. This is the b term, 4y. So again, it's a, which was 3x squared, that's 9x squared, times 2 times a times b. So this became, as you can see, 24xy. And then back here is b squared, so 4y squared is 16y squared, and that's it. Keep in mind that if you were to, again, write this out 2 times, then again, you can do the FOIL method, you'll end up with the same answer, okay? But there's a formula associated with the special case. The next one was this one. If you have an a minus b, this is called the square of difference. If you expand this out, it's like having a minus b times a minus b. This is the formula. It looks just like the last one, but there's a minus. So as you can see, a is 6p, so I plugged in a squared. 6p squared is 36p squared. And then a minus sign, 2 times a times b. Remember, this is your a, this is your b. Multiplied, I get negative 12p. And then 1 squared is just plus 1 in the back. So I'm just going to show that was special cases. And the last one is this one, the product of a sum and difference. So here's where there's sum, there's a difference. This is the formula. So if you get anything that's a plus b times a binomial that's a minus b, the formula is equal to a squared minus b squared. So the a is 3n, the b is 2, and then you just plug in again a squared. This right here would be 9n squared. B is 2. Remember, there's a minus in the formula, so you put your subtraction symbol. 2 squared is 4. That's the answer. Here's another one. A is 4c. B is 7d. It's a squared, so I did 4c squared, which is 16c squared, minus, then b squared, 49d squared, and that's it. All right, so now I want to move on to the last part. So in this one, again, pre-AP, we did, I think, kind of touch on a little bit, but this one's using the distributive property. And so for this one, there are 2 cases you need to be able to know. The one that has to do with GCF, greatest common factor. This is where, again, they give you some terms, and you're trying to figure out, when you look at your coefficients, what is a number that those 3 coefficients have in common. Then you look at the variable part and you figure out what minimum they have in common with respect to, a and b, or x and y. So that's one way we have to do, is distributive property with GCF. And the last one to talk about is factor by grouping. This is where they give you 4 terms and you begin to group together the like terms, and then you begin to pull out what they have in common. So in this case, they put the ax and bx term together. What do they have in common? They pulled out an x as their common factor. That leaves left over, right, a plus b. Because if you do the distributive property, that's what will be left over. Then in these 2 terms, they pulled out the y, they left the a and the b. And then, of course, whatever is in front of the parentheses, you put that in one set of parentheses, and then what they match, that's how you know you did it right, put that in the second. parentheses. So I'm just going to jump in and do some problems. Make sure that you read the message I put on Schoology to know which ones to do for homework. All right, so here is the GCF with the distributive property. So what if they give you something like 14c squared plus 2c? So when we think about 14 and 2, their common factor would be 2, okay? Also, this term has 2 c's, this one has 1 c. So what do they have in common? 1 c. So I'm going to pull a c out in the front as well. And then I'm thinking about the distributive property backwards. So I'm thinking 2c times what would give me 14c squared? That would be 7c. 2c times what would give me 2c? Well, 1. So that's the answer. The answer to this, let me rewrite it, 2c, 7c plus 1. And if you want to make sure you get it right, is you just do your distributive property. You're going to go back to the original problem. All right, here's another one. Let me find 2 more of these. What if they gave you something like 4a squared b squared plus 2a squared b minus 10ab squared? Okay, so we have 4, 2, and negative 10. What number do they have in common? 2. So I'll pull out a 2. And then this one has 2a's, 1a, so they have at least 1a in common. 2b's, 1b, 2b's, they have 1b in common, all 3 terms. What would be left over? Okay, so you're thinking to yourself, 2ab times what would give us this? The answer is 2 times 2 would give us 4. A times a would give us an a squared, and then b times b would be b squared. So it's 2ab again. Here, you already have the 2. You have 1a, you need another a, so I'm going to put an a there, and there's 1b pulled out and 1b in this term, so that's all we're going to put as an a. And then 2 times what would give us negative 10? Negative 5. We already have an a, but we need an extra b, so 5b. And that's the answer. Remember that again, when you do the distributive property, you're going to get back the original terms. Here's another one. 5c squared v, 15c squared v squared, plus 5c squared v cubed. So again, you have 5, negative 15, and 5. 5 is the greatest common factor they have in common. 5 can go into all 3 of those, leave no remainder. 2 c's, 2 c's, and 2 c's. So they all have at least 2 c's in common. 1v, 2 v's, 3 v's in that term, so they have at least 1 v in common. All right, as you can see, 2c squared v, I want to make 2c squared v, so this is a 1. 5 times what would give me negative 15? Negative 3. This term has 2 c's and 2 v's. We got the 2 c's, we don't have that extra v, so I need a v on that negative 3. And then this one has 2 c's and 3 v's, so the c's are good. Also, again, for making 5 times 1 is 5. So now I'm going to put a plus 1. And this has 1v, this one has 2, so, and there you go. So again, that is factoring with GCF and the distributive property. All right, now let's talk about factor by grouping. So for factor by grouping, is they like to give you at least 4 terms. So let's look at this one. Okay, so 90% of the time, the person right next to him is the best one to pair them with. However, there are times that you got to try different groups together and then see if you get a matching, right? So again, we could try these 2 and we say, oh look, 16 and 24, what's their greatest common factor? I believe it would be 4, 1g and 1g. But then when you think of 2h and negative 3, or negative 2h and negative 3, see, these don't have anything in common. So we're going to pair them up a little different. So I'm going to take that negative 2h and pair it with the 16, and I'm going to take the 24 and pair it with the 3. If you ask me, well, Miss Mosley, how did you know to pair who with who? Well, I know that 2 and 16 is a multiple of 2, and I know 24 is a multiple of 3, so that's the best way to match them. So now I'm going to write my 2 groups. with their like partner right next to them. And then I'm going to begin to do what we just did earlier, which was factoring out by GCF and then have the distributive property backwards. And I'm going to see if I get parentheses that match. So here we go. Pull out a 2. This guy has 1H. This term has 1H, so they have an H in common. This is what would be left over, 8G, because 2H times 8G would be 16GH. 2H times -1 would give me a -2H. For this one, their common factor is 3. There's no letter to pull out, so let me put a plus. That leaves me with a 8G minus 1. So again, because those two parentheses in the back match, I did it correctly. And all that's left to do is whatever's on the outside, put it in one parentheses with the right signs. And then for the part that matches, just write that one time in a parentheses as a binomial. And that is the final simplified answer. If you want to make sure that you did it correctly, just do the FOIL method. And again, you should get the original problem. All right, let's do another one. What if they gave me this one? All right, so for this one, what I'm going to do is I look side by side and I'm like, okay, great, we have x's in common, we have y's in common, but as far as our coefficient, this one has a 1 and this is a 7, there's nothing to pull out there. Okay, these two look good together because, again, 21 is a multiple of 3. But I'm just curious to see what would happen if I compare the 7 and the 21 together and the 3 and this one together. So I'm going to work this two ways. I'm going to leave these two and pair side by side like that and make these my two groups. I'm going to see if I get a matching parentheses set. So for this one, I wouldn't pull out any number, but they have at least 3 x's in common. 2 y's here, 1 y here. Again, this is group 1. 2 y's here, 1 y, so bring out 1 y. And that leaves me with x cubed times x gives me x to the 4th. And then I need a y squared, so xy. And then back here, I'm going to do -7. And because x cubed y times -7 is -7x cubed y. So I'm done. Now this one, pull out a 3. There's no x or y in common. So this leaves me with xy minus 7. So now see, it matches. So we're going to put x cubed y plus 3 in one parentheses, xy minus 7 in another parentheses. If we FOIL this out, we should get the original problem. So that's good. I'm also going to try again by making my two groups, this one and this one. So what happens if I do, just working this again? There's a negative on the 7, be careful. And then the other one was, we're just regrouping. Let's see if we get the same thing. All right, so, and remember, you always want these to match. All right, so now I pull out a -7. That would leave me with x cubed y plus 3. And then for this one, I can pull out 1x, 1y. That leaves me with x cubed y and then plus 3. And see, it still matches. So x cubed y plus 3 matches, and then that -7 plus xy, it's the same. All right, one more. What if they give me something like (48tu minus 90t plus 32u minus 60. All right, so got to think about what number is the greatest factor of 48 and 90. I really do think it is 4, maybe higher. Well, I know 8 goes in there, 6 goes in there, 8 can't go into here, 6 can't go in there, leave remainder. Oh, 6 does work, I think. Yeah, let's do 6. I'm just going to see what happens. All Alright, so sorry about that. So for this one, let's pull out a 6.